Well, hello and welcome to this episode of the Terri Cole Show. I am so excited that you are hanging out with me today. If you're new to this crew and you don't know me at all, I'm a licensed psychotherapist, a relationship expert, and the founder of Boundary Bootcamp and Real Love Revolution, coming up in 2020 in the first week in February. It is a 12-week course for ladies only, women in relationships, and women who are single looking for love. Are all appropriate for Real Love Revolution. You'll be hearing me talk about it. And now, really, Real Love Revolution season is beginning. So I'm going to be talking a lot about love, relationships, communication, sex, passion, all the things. But today I got an email from someone who asked me a question. And so I wanted to answer it because I thought if they have this question, then maybe many of you also have this question, which she was asking me if her father was a narcissist, and she was describing his behavior. So I just figured I would do an episode on basically providing you with a checklist of behaviors that a parent would exhibit if they were a narcissist. I'm also going to, in the show notes and in the blog itself, I'm going to link you to the DSM-5, which is the diagnostic manual that doctors use to actually make the diagnosis of narcissistic personality disorder. Because I think it's important that we make the distinction that you may have a parent who does some of these things, but they may not be a diagnosable narcissist. And this behavior basically applies to pretty much anyone in your life who's a narcissist. But how it impacts you as a child is very different because you're dealing with this behavior in your developmental years throughout childhood. So, of course, it has impact in adult relationships. So, and I also did an interview for the Understanding Narcissism Summit that Sounds True put on, and it was such an amazing summit. And there'll be a link in the notes also if you're interested. You can actually buy the summit now. There was a period of time where everything was free and then you would need to upload. So they keep it free, I think, for 24 hours. But it's absolutely worth the money because there are 20 experts, me included, talking about narcissism. So in that interview, I was talking about the connection between narcissistic parents and narcissistic partners. So this is sort of a bit of an extension of that, or I'm just always wanting to talk about narcissism because you guys always want to hear about it. So let's discuss, shall we? If you're on the fence, if you think your parent might be a narcissist, I'm going to now go through 20 signs or signals or behaviors that they exhibit that would tell you that yes, they are. So let's just start with usually they are boundary bullies. So your ability to have a boundary with a narcissistic parent, it would be very difficult. So they're kind of boundary erasers because they're incredibly controlling about what happens in your life, especially if you're the golden child, which we'll get to. They also used codependency to sort of control you. So they were overly invested. Different kinds of narcissists, right? So let's start with that. There's more than one kind. So you can have the sort of the ignoring narcissist or the engulfing narcissist. So the person who was the parent that was all up in your business, that is the engulfing kind. If you had a parent who still wanted to control you and all of those things, but basically really didn't care. They were ignoring you. They really only wanted you to fulfill whatever it is that they needed. So those are basically the two kinds that we have. Codependency is a way of being connected to you. It's like not allowing you to be a separate person. And in a healthy parent-child relationship, there comes a time in your development, usually teen years, where you're separating and individuating, we call it, where you're needing to become your own person. A lot of times that causes conflict, but a healthy parent, even if they don't like how you're behaving, they won't destroy you over it. But a narcissistic parent has such control over their children most of the time that you're too afraid to separate and individuate. You just want to like survive the experience, at least unconsciously. So that was number 2. They're basically controlling you with their codependency. Number 3, they were really into what you could do for them, right? So they were very loving to you when they were getting what they wanted from you. But they could also turn on a dime if you weren't doing what it is that they wanted. So their love was for sure conditional. And you felt that way. You felt that it was conditional because they would withhold it if you weren't doing what they wanted you to do. The 4th one is always about them, right? No matter what is going on, everything is always about them. I had a client who had a mother where she was dating, my client was dating someone, and she was way grown up. And it was someone that the mother didn't like. The mother really wanted her to be with a doctor or a dentist. Like, this was super important. And I guess maybe this guy, I'm trying to remember what he did for a living. He had a professional job. And even if he didn't, it's none of her friggin' business, seeing as how my client was about 30 at the time. But I think he was actually worked on Wall Street. And she literally said, "How could you do this to me?" The mother said that to the adult daughter about dating someone because they weren't a doctor or a dentist. And that sounds ridiculous, but that is a true story. So again, nothing is really about you when you have a truly a narcissistic parent. It always manages to find its way back to them. Everything is about them. They're also vengeful. So if they feel like you've wronged them in some way, they're definitely not at all above sort of getting even with you. Which, even saying that is just so scary and depressing, right? But yeah, someone who super holds a grudge, remembers the disappointments, remembers the things that you did that they don't like, and will always remind you of them as well. The 6th point is that they are a spotlight hog. It's like they almost can't tolerate the conversation to be about you. Or someone else. If someone else starts talking, they'll just interrupt, they'll bring it back to them, they'll find any opening. But it's like they get bored very, very easily. And if what you're saying to them or what someone else is saying is not interesting to them, they don't even feel compelled. They'll be like on their phone, right in the conversation. They do not care. Okay, number 7, they're massive guilt trippers. It's a little bit like they're willing to do, the means justifies the end. Whatever they need to do to get you to fall in line as to the way they think you should be behaving, they're happy to do it. So guilt is definitely a lever that they push and pull on, especially with mothers. This can be, in a way, not more common. Yeah, more common. It's true. Or maybe I just know more about mothers and daughters because that's what I've mostly had in my practice. Daughters, of narcissistic mothers who are in pain because of that. And traditionally, we think about sometimes mothers being more guilt-trippy than fathers. But if your father is a narcissist, he was a guilt tripper too, most likely. This one really bums me out. Number 8, they're competitive with you. So if you don't have a narcissistic parent and you're listening to this, let that sink in. Because if you're not a narcissistic parent, that is the least parenting thing how could you be competitive with your child? To me, that's the weirdest thing in the world. It's so weird. If you're a healthy parent, you pray that your children do better than you. Please, out-succeed me. It doesn't even matter because it's not a competition. The success of my children, I feel just so much pride. Like, right on, you worked hard, you're talented, go you. And I cannot, it's just very painful if you have a parent who just can't give that to you. Who just can't. They need to make it about themselves, but they also can be competitive with other people in your life. Like, if, let's say, you're married and you say, oh, my mother-in-law actually gave me it was nice for my birthday. She gave me a nice bag. If you have a narcissistic mother, she might say, well, I've given you plenty of nice gifts throughout your life. And you're like, what? What does that have to do with anything? Why are you competing with my mother-in-law? That is so weird. You're different people. We have different relationships. But it's so common. And again, that same the same conversation style where you're talking about something not related to them at all. And everything in a real narcissist life and mind, they are the center of all worlds. They expect to be the center of your world. They are obviously the center of their own world, not their children, not their spouse. Their needs, what they want. So I think that you really have to, when you have a narcissistic parent, it's like expecting them to be different. And the child within us wants them to be different. We just keep thinking, this time I'm going to be good enough. This time I'm going to get their attention because I'm doing it this way. This time, whatever it is, And you're like, if you have a life of evidence, and I want you to go through this list and get real with yourself, like, have you had this experience? You can lessen your suffering by sort of getting into acceptance about what your parent may or may not be capable of, but also protecting yourself from their judgment, from their manipulation. So by distancing yourself, or by really knowing yourself and just not letting it work, right? Which is hard because a narcissist will become incredibly provocative. If what they're doing is not working, they will, up the ante so that it does work. So that's why when you look into narcissist abuse recovery, there's a lot of talk about the gray rock method. I've done stuff on that. I did not make that up. That was someone on the internet. I gave credit to them, but I don't even know their name because they didn't publish it. But it's a way of interacting with a narcissist that will have them lose interest in you, basically. So that was number 8. Let me not get lost. I'm never going to get through them. There's 20. Number 9, they take credit for your accomplishments. So your skills somehow come back to them. Your accomplishments, they want to show you off to their friends. They want to, but again, not in a healthy way. Healthy parents, we can brag about how talented our kids are, and we do. And because we're legitimately proud of them. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about puffing themselves up with your accomplishments, which also, when you're the child of a narcissistic parent like this, it's like you are an extension of them. And I mean, obviously in real life you're not, but that is the feeling that there's like nothing that you can have for yourself. They want everything that you have is theirs, and if it's good, it's because of them. If it's bad, it has nothing to do with them. They're super thin-skinned. So they will just lose it at any idea, any perceived slight, or any perceived implied criticism, even if you were not being overt about it. They will completely overreact, and that is also where they become vengeful. They remember every slight. You want to talk about having the filing cabinet in your mind where you put like grievances? Theirs is like a whole entire building where they remember every single slight ever from anyone, and they will, if you stay in their life or if it's friends or whatever, they will make the person pay for sure. They're terrible listeners because they don't really have the capacity to care. They're listening for an opening to bring it back to themselves, to tell you, oh, I don't know if I ever told you that story. You're like, oh my God, yes, you did. And so much of the time, of course, with narcissists, the stories they're telling are stories that are, they're exaggerated. They exaggerate their accomplishments. They take it all to the next level. They will bold-faced lie about their accomplishments. It's so interesting that you can do that. And like, I mean, sometimes people will check, but most of the time people just take your word for it. If you say that, your IQ is whatever, And I mean, those are things that narcissists will just lie about to make themselves feel more and more superior. They can be super insulting. So they can be very rude. They can cut you down, especially if they're feeling threatened by anything that you're doing. Instead of being happy, they'll be critical of what's going on because it doesn't involve them. So they don't want you doing whatever that thing is. So it's not going to be so great in their eyes, but very insulting. And as a child, if you grew up with a narcissistic parent, they really did exert like the iron fist control over you. Especially if, and you know, I did an episode on narcissist family, like the narc family system roles, basically. So you can, if you didn't see that and you're interested, we'll put the link in here for you. But, you know, there is like the golden child and the scapegoat. Like those are the two most well-known that people know of. So if you are the golden child, they really want control over your life because you are the one who is sort of bringing respect back to the family. You're the successful one. You're the one who is giving that parent bragging rights. And if you're the scapegoat, sadly for you, then everything that's wrong is your fault. And there's a lot of inequity. It's in a narcissistic family. There is literally no such thing as fairness. How can it be fair when one child is being quote unquote favored? But don't get me wrong. If you are the scapegoat and you think, well, the narcissist, they chose the golden child and the golden child really had it good, they didn't. They were just as much a victim of this disorder and this dysfunction and the abuse as the scapegoat. It's just different. But the amount of pressure, trust me, that role is not free either in this kind of a dysfunctional system. Okay, number 14 is that they would gaslight you. They would, and gaslight, you guys, I also did a whole thing on gaslighting, so we'll put that link in too, where they would literally deny your reality to continue to hold control over you. So gaslighting is just basically being dishonest. Just you saying, well, Mom, you remember we were together at the mall and we saw that thing. I told you I was going to buy that sweater because we were together when we saw it. The parent might say, that never happened. We weren't together at the mall. No, I saw this online. I bought it myself. Like if she bought something you said you were going to buy and basically she bought it first. She would just bold-faced lie to your face. And when you're a child, this really negatively impacts your ability to trust yourself because you're constantly questioning your own sanity. Like, wait, I could have sworn I was with her and we saw the sweater. And then she's like, why would I do that? I wouldn't do that. I saw this online. I wasn't with you. You're like, okay, what are you going to do? Be like, you're lying? I mean, even if you know they are, because you also know calling out a narcissist will just ensue like a world of pain for you, and who the hell needs that? Nobody. So you just learn to stuff it when you're the child of a narcissist. And they also parentified you. They talked about things that are inappropriate. They burdened you with their emotional burden. They told you things about the marriage, whether it's the father or the mother. Either one of them could have told you inappropriate things about the marriage, stuff that burdened you. But they wanted you to take care of them. Just another terrible thing to experience. All right, we already said they had a favorite. They had a golden child. All right, that was number 16. Number 17, this one is a little complicated, but not really. So you know the psychological defense mechanism called projection. That's basically where you project onto the other person the thing that you're doing. Does that make sense? So the most basic explanation would be you're having a heated conversation with someone. You have not raised your voice. They have raised their voice, and they say, stop yelling. But you're actually not yelling. They are. That makes sense? That's a legit defense mechanism, psychologically, to basically disavow what we're doing. But it's so painful if a parent is doing this to a child, and even an adult child, where let's say they're sneaky and dishonest, and they're projecting onto you, oh, you know, I had a $20 bill over there, but after you left, it wasn't here. And you're like, are you kidding me? You actually think I would steal $20 from you? Like, wow. And they do because they would do that, or they don't have a moral compass. So they're projecting that onto you. That is so super painful. Lack of empathy, that probably should have been more at the top of the list. This is number 18, where they can pretend to have empathy. A lot of, narcissists are very smart, many of them, very crafty. They can mimic emotions. Because what they're amazing at is getting what they want, getting people to do what they want. So if they need to pretend they care about the way you feel, they will. But the real telltale sign of someone who is a diagnosable narcissist is that they literally do not have the capacity to have empathy for you. So your feelings didn't really matter to them because they couldn't. So they would act like that your feelings mattered, but maybe at times if that would get them what they wanted, but your feelings couldn't have mattered because they actually have no ability to display empathy. They just want to control the way you feel. I had a client once who had a very narcissistic mother, and her mother was constantly telling her how her feelings were wrong. Like, she wanted her to be happy all the time. It's all about being happy. Everything is perfect. Everything. And I'd be like, dude, nothing is perfect in life. Like, let's start with that and then move on to it is not normal to be happy all the time. And anyone who acts like they are is bypassing some shit. I can tell you right now. Why are we vilifying all of these other emotions? But it was because that's not the way the narcissistic mother wanted to see this grown-up daughter. She just wanted her to be, turn that frown around, that type of thing. You're like, how about I'm a complex human being? And that's not the way it works, but it's so painful if that is the expectation. And to survive, you do it as a kid, and then you grow up and you're like, I don't understand my feelings at all because I was never even allowed to have them unless, in the case of my client, they were positive feelings, which is such a drag. All right, we're getting there. Number 19, they're always right. So I don't think I need to expand on that. You understand, they're always right. And the thing with grown up, so narcissistic parents with grown children, if your kids grow up to be smart and whatever, if you have a narcissistic father, let's say, and you say, you're talking about something that you know about. If I were talking about, psychotherapy or something, literally that narcissistic parent would still be one-upping the grown child. And they would come in and say, well, actually, there was a study that just came out of Stanford and then what they're saying is either refuting what you've just said or it's one-upping what you've just said. That's just the least satisfying kind of conversation, and it's so depressing. All we want is our parents to be proud of us. We want them to let us shine, as hopefully we do for our children. And with narcissistic parents, they cannot. They will not. They cannot. And number 20, they really care what other people think. So they like to present this perfect front. They're very into keeping up with the Joneses, having the best of everything. They're way more invested in how things look than how things are. So it's like they have a false self because they never developed like an authentic self, let's say, or who even knows what that is. I mean, most narcissists have had some childhood stuff that happened. Either they were overly indulged or they were abused in some way where their feelings didn't matter, so that this basically blossoms out of those experiences, So making it all look perfect, perfection, wanting to be the envy of other people, that is way high on their list. So they don't want you doing anything that would take away this false image of your family, whether it's in society or school or community. Very invested in what it looks like, less invested in what it is, actually. Okay, so there's the list for you. The reason I included and am including the link to the DSM-5 is because, listen, there's a lot of we'd love to diagnose everyone in the world, but it is a diagnosable thing. You may have a self-centered parent, a parent who has narcissistic tendencies, but if they have the capacity for empathy, they're not a narcissist. That does not mean that their selfishness didn't impact you, because of course it did and it would, but that's not the same. So I say check out the DSM-5, the description of narcissism. What are the traits, the behaviors that have to be present for longer than 6 months or a year for anyone? And so I'm not saying you can diagnose them. I'm just letting you look at what doctors use to diagnose them, so that you can get more clarity on what you've been dealing with in your life. Okay. Wow, this got long, so I'm going to stop now. I also want to let you know that next Wednesday, we start Wednesday Wisdom again. Woo, woo! So you don't want to miss it. It's going to be on Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in all the places. So on my business page, and it'll be in the Real Love Revolution Facebook group. So please join us. I'm going to be talking all about love and relationships. So whether you're partnered or whether you are single, it'll have something for everybody. I hope that this added value to your life. If you are in the U.S., I hope you have a nice Thanksgiving. And I can't wait to see you next week. I have a super special episode, which I'm not telling you about right now. And if you're interested in the Sounds True, Understanding Narcissism stuff, just look for the link and you can actually purchase it in the show notes or in the blog itself. I hope you guys have an amazing week. And as always, take care of you.